All right, it looks like we have the full board.
I will call the meeting to order. And the first item, of course, are the minutes of March 17th, 2020. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of March 17th, 2020 with any amendments or additions thereto.
I would second.
Is there a second?
I would second.
In 10 seconds. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. And page 4. Hearing no corrections, all those in favor of approving the minutes of March 17th, 2020, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions. Moving on to public comment. Is there anyone on the line wishing to make a comment?
I see no one in the chat who's wishing to make a comment.
I think maybe I just say one comment that we're dealing with a novel coronavirus, and I'd like to congratulate the entire town staff for providing novel consistency and dealing with the crisis in all our jobs. And also, I'd like to congratulate the community for their novel approach to doing things like a dance and the teddy bear, the teddy bear, what am I looking for? The door-to-door campaign that they put out for the teddy bears. So with that, we can move on to the management recruitment process. Do we have our Bob Mercier and Alan Gold?
Yep, Terry, I will, they're waiting and I'll move them on to our panel right now.
Okay.
So be with us momentarily. This looks like it. Alan, I can see you. Just waiting for Bob to his video to kick in.
Very good. I see you guys. You might remind him that there's a button at the bottom of the screen that says, it's got the little video, the circle through the video. He needs to hit that. There you go.
There it is.
How's that?
Well done.
Well, this is unique.
They're all set, Terry.
So I'll turn it over to Bob and Alan to give us their process that they've gone through so far and recommendations.
Sure. So, and there is a lot of echo that I'm getting.
Me too.
It might be because there are a few of you in one room, maybe, and the audience.
Mhm.
But in any event, my name's Alan Gould, and it's kind of nice to meet you all. I mean, it's nice to meet you. It's different in this kind of way. So I'm president of Municipal Resources, and Bob is one of our lead recruitment consultants. So he's been kind of taking the lead on a lot of this, and I just look over his shoulder. If you'd like a little update, I'm happy to provide that. Is this a good time to do that?
Yes.
Okay. So I know that Bob had sent out an email to you, a little update on the first, where we had, I think it was 14 candidates. At this point, we processed 6 more from that time. So we have 20 candidates. I have to tell you that we're not inspired by the candidates that we have. We think an awful lot of that has to do with the present situation with the coronavirus. So out of the 20 candidates that we have in the pool at this point, I would really only consider right now one of those to be really top tier. 3 more of them are of interest. At this point, we would typically expect to see 30 or 35 applicants in the pool. The scheduled closing is for Monday morning at 8 o'clock. So I know before we get done tonight, I know that we'd like to talk to you a little bit about maybe extending that deadline. And the problem is, as we reach out to people, we're finding that they're really tied up with the whole response to the coronavirus, things that their jobs are just taking longer to do because they have to deal with all these other issues, all these emergency management type details. Just communicating with people is that much more difficult. And they're just not considering applying at this time. But we are hearing, in a couple of weeks or a month, when I get caught up with this stuff, then I'd very much be interested in the position. So that's just kind of an issue that we're having. I think I said that all of the 20 candidates, all but 3 are from away. And when I say away, that means outside of the immediate area. Generally outside of the state of Vermont. I think we have just 3 candidates from the state of Vermont. Yep. So all those candidates being from away kind of poses another challenge. Not that the right person can't be in that group we already have, but it's such a small group. It's not a huge number to choose from. Would you agree with that, Bob?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I've spoken directly to a number of folks who are pretty interested in Williston, but as Alan suggested, it's just and your manager and your assistant manager can probably confirm this. It's a difficult time for any administrator or manager to start thinking about other communities when they're just trying to hold together their own community. So that's a problem, which is why we put that last paragraph in our update to you. And we can talk about that as we go forward. But clearly you have some interest from folks that we are interested in bringing to you. But again, the timing is pretty difficult for folks right now.
So questions? Go ahead.
One of the things I was just going to say for you folks to consider is that, we would like to keep moving forward with the people that are in the process. That means we would get essay questions out there. That means we would start our preliminary background reviews, and schedule some own interviews. But if we were given a couple more weeks that we could allow the deadline to run, and I think in most cases we can extend the deadline in most venues without any additional cost to you. We'll catch other people up in the process as they come into it. So I'm not saying that we would stop moving forward. I'm just saying, as we work through the resumes we have, let's allow more time for people to apply is my suggestion. Otherwise, you're going to have an extremely limited pool.
I concur with that.
Do you think that 2 weeks is better or 4 weeks would be better?
Well, honestly, Bob and I have talked about it. 4 weeks would probably be the ideal. Normally we say we want to step right through these things. The term I use is deliberately. We don't want to waste a lot of time because somebody that was interested in day one may have other job applications out there, and we don't want to lose that candidate. But in this case, we're just finding if they're a seated town administrator, town manager, they're not looking to move right now immediately because they don't want to bail on their community in the middle of this crisis that they're dealing with. So, you know, I think 2 weeks at the minimum, and I think a month at the maximum. And I think as long as we keep people informed as they submit their resume, I think that that would be very helpful, and we would try to keep their interest piqued. So in other words, if the deadline as it's established right now is Monday, we would send out a notice. We would update the ads that we have before then to extend that deadline. We could extend it 2 weeks, or we could extend it a month. My preference would be a month. And then we would kind of take it on a rolling admissions. If you remember back with college, you could enroll kind of on a rolling status. So as soon as we get somebody's resume that's of interest to us, I think at that point we would submit the essay questions to them, and we would do our preliminary background work. We would schedule a phone interview, so that at the point that the real deadline is passed, whether it be 2 weeks or a month, we now don't have a long delay in bringing those people before you. And quite honestly, if we had to do interviews in 2 weeks, there's no way that you'd be able to do on-site interviews. We wouldn't be able to get people to fly in from out of state. You might not be able to meet in groups. I have another recruitment right now, and we're doing 2 separate panels of interviews next Friday, all through Zoom. And although Zoom's okay, you don't get to see the person, you know, face to face. And that interaction, to me, is important when you do these processes.
I agree. And to that, if you don't mind, Terry, to that point, Alan said we'll continue with the process. For instance, I'm going to be talking to your department managers tomorrow. Thanks to Rick and Eric for setting it all up. So they're all on board to get some phone discussions going with me. And based on a lot of that discussion, and I've already talked to all 5 of you, but as I talk to all of your senior managers, it's going to give me some thoughts on how to craft some questions for the essays that Alan talked about. So I'll be crafting those, sharing those with Rick before we send out. And we've got some interesting people, not a heck of a lot, as Alan suggested, but we do have some interesting people that we're going to stay in contact with. Some of those, by the way, are not sitting managers, but are managers, but they were in transition, which is likely the reason they responded so quickly, because they're in transition, as opposed to managers who are currently working and going through this coronavirus issue. So the process itself is going to continue along. As I said, I'm talking to your folks tomorrow. We will be in communication with those who have already submitted, as Alan suggested. And depending on what you want to do with the extension, we will then take it from there. Alan suggested we'll call all the venues, get the ads extended. That's no big deal. And again, our administrative staff at MRI will be in contact with all of the candidates, just to let folks know that we haven't forgotten about them. Things are still in process. The Williston Selectboard is making some determinations going forward. This is not going to be news, by the way, to anybody who's in the field looking. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. So are there questions or comments from the members of the board? Is there any objections to?
Terry, I'd like to jump in if I can.
Yes.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
I'm not interested in bailing on my community either. And so, well, I am interested in gaining some additional free time. There's a couple of different options. One is I can delay it a little bit, or I could perhaps work part-time. You know, I can be somewhat flexible, I guess, is the main point I'm trying to make here.
Thank you, Rick.
We appreciate that. So members of the board, any comments or questions?
That kind of answered my question, which was, what is the impact on when we would be through this process, and how does it impact, not impact, I'm sorry, and how would that then coincide with Rick's tentative, I say tentative now, departure date? Yeah. Because I'm worried about that interim period.
If we extended this for, say, another 30 days, and we just kept things rolling as we intend to do, you'd probably be looking at making a final decision sometime at the end of May. And then it's a matter of how long it takes that person to make the transition to Williston. Do they have to move? Do they have to give a 30-day notice? I think that's where we'd be. It'd probably put us about 3 weeks behind. I don't think it would put us a whole month behind, because we're just going to keep on moving.
Well, given the pandemic, it seems like if we could ask for another month, and Rick, if you can somehow accommodate that, if that does delay things, that'd be my preference, is that we extend the net that much further so that we have that much more option.
As I said, I am willing to work with the town as best I can. So I'm not going to leave the town high and dry.
Thank you. Unless I hear, there's no objection, we'll extend the application process for 30 days. Hearing no objections. Anything else, Alan or Bob?
No, I'm good. Bob will be doing those interviews. Then we'll be drafting the essay questions. We'll get them right out to whoever's in the pool at the time that we have interest in, and we'll just keep on going. So, thank you for allowing us to, or for accepting our recommendation, and we'll get those deadlines as further established Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, and the final thing I'll say is that we will keep Rick advised as to what's happening, so that he can communicate back to the board, so that you folks know what the status is as we go forward. They've been terrific to us, by the way. Both Rick and Eric have been great, and I certainly look forward to talking to your department managers tomorrow.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you both for your efforts.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, folks. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next on our agenda is the liquor license and special events series. Is Kim available yet?
Eric, remember, you're muted.
Are you seeing me?
Not yet.
Hang on.
Can hear you though.
Let's try that.
Kim,
Hello.
there you go.
Hi, Kim.
My parents might take a little longer.
Me too. So we're ready to hear from you, Kim. And we received your applications and your letter. So if you'd like to give a little presentation to us based on the letter.
Okay, I can do my best. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
This is my first Zoom, so I'm doing my best. We as a business here in town, we have been trying to find ways to increase more of a community mindedness and have our part of that be something that we feel is something we really want to give back to the town because, obviously we've really enjoyed all of the experiences that we've had sort of right in the middle of the village there on our corner. And so we have been kind of rolling around what would be something new and different in town that hasn't really been tried before for a little while now, about a year. And it really didn't come to fruition until we closed up shop in December. We had a big meeting at the end of December and decided that we wanted to roll forward with this idea of Truckin' Tuesdays. We'd been approached a couple of times over the years from other food trucks, and we've kind of just been, no, I don't think so. But it seems like it's becoming quite a phenomenon, both locally and globally. And there's a lot more local people that own food trucks that would be, local businesses that we could help, support. So we decided to talk to a few of them, and it was very well received. So I don't know if you've seen which ones we have, but we have, I believe, 2 or 3 are actually Williston residents. One is a Heinsberg resident, and then Single Pebbles coming out of Burlington. But a lot of them are very local to our town, which is nice. So we're pretty excited about it. We've approached it from multiple angles within the town. We've approached, obviously, Dottie, the library, to encourage Dottie Bookmobile to stop by, which is definitely going to happen. And we immediately approached both the fire department and the police department because we wanted to have it be a place for them to be able to have outreach and speak to people that are there, and maybe have a different location and a different event that would allow them to communicate with the different townspeople, as opposed to, I know when the fire department does their big pancake breakfast, they're a little busy. So it's hard to talk to a lot of people, but this would give them a chance to, kind of just relax and have fun and meet different townspeople and have a good, a good time and be able to have a presence there. So it seems like everybody seemed pretty excited about it. So our plan is to start May 26th. But that's flexible, obviously, at this point. We're really hoping that 6 weeks from now, things are in a much better place for us. But we've already talked to Eric about how that might change. And so we definitely also have a lot of local, very small, like husband and wife, or, just like a few 1 or 2 friends that are musicians locally. And I would say of the 10 groups that we've lined up, 8 or 10 groups, almost all of them live in Williston. So they're all very local residents as well, which is fun. So they would be performing if we're at a point where we can encourage people to sit and gather. Well, we're obviously not there yet, but once we get there, that will be, I think, very refreshing for everybody. So I don't know how much more you want me to touch on. I haven't really said in the letter.
That you are going to be working with the food shelf as well.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes, absolutely. That's the one thing that I didn't mention. So our plan, because we're inviting other trucks to come, the fire trucks and the police department's truck, if it's available, with their new scales and stuff, so people can check that out. And the Dottie Bookmobile is sort of a truck. And then, of course, all the food trucks. We're like, how do we get our truck involved? So we decided to use our commercial van, one of our big commercial vans. And our intent is to speak with the board over at the food shelf. And 2 to 3 times this summer, we're hoping to put most of our advertising through the food, for Truckin' Tuesdays. We will be promoting, making sure that the community knew what the food shelf was, in need of that particular week. And our hope is to fill our truck and do a fill a truck, so that when people come to the food truck, event, that they will be bringing with them something to put in the truck, so that we can then deliver it to the food shelf.
So I'll ask the board if they have any questions or comments.
Oh, wait. Hey, Kim, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
So I really like the idea. The one thing I do want to hear from you is about safety and the concept of serving alcohol, and what provisions you'll put in place to make sure minors aren't served or people aren't overserved. The common issues around alcohol.
Yep, that was one of our concerns too as well. So I've spoken to both local breweries that we're working with, and they definitely are pros at what they do. And so I'm not relying completely on them, but I do know that they're the experts on, they'll be the ones with the liquor license that would be carting the people that come to their truck. And it's not our intent to have a big party. We're expecting a population of people that are going to be family oriented and coming with, their kids and just wanting a beer with their burger, and not, there to get 3 or 4 beers and party it up. But we'll have our own staff presence, and we'll be monitoring, what we feel is appropriate behavior, and looking for signs of, possibly not. We used to have a liquor license for the farm market way back when we sold wine. So, I have been to several meetings to understand, what to look for, and my brother has as well. So, we're not novices. We know, what the risks are. So our intent is to make sure that everyone is being safe. And the police will also be there. Their intent is to be there. I think Eric was at the meeting when we were talking to them, and their intent is to be there almost every week. So if they're not already on call. So I think that will probably make people a little leery from doing the wrong thing.
Other questions or comments from the board? This appears that John Adams has joined the meeting.
I think they can probably hear you, but they're having little technical difficulties at home. So
Okay.
Can you hear us?
Oh, there they are.
Yeah. Welcome.
We're
John.
here, just not visible.
So you have comments for us?
No, it's just something different that we're looking forward to. Certainly small businesses always have challenges, and we're always looking for different ways to be part of the community and make our business vital to the community. And our children came up with this plan. Did that come through?
We heard as far as our children came up with the plan.
I probably was sitting too far away. We're just always looking for ways of making our business more vital to the community. And in this way, we're bringing a lot of the community together in a food event, and certainly making it part of our business as well, and being part of the community at the same time. And it's just things that a business has to do to stay abreast of things that are changing. Food trucks have become very popular across the United States, and this seemed like a super opportunity.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add 2 points actually. One is that a lot of the food trucks that will be here are very excited because their plan is to sort of have signature dishes almost on a weekly, they're going to change up their menu as our season rolls through, and they'll be interested in purchasing local produce. Not just ours, but also other produce we bring in that's not ours, like strawberries and things like that we might have that they could use in their food truck. So it'll be nice for people to have a menu that's very local. And I think the feedback that we've gotten on social media from both customers and the food trucks that are going to be involved has just been so positive. We've had so many people, even now when they're social distancing and walking along the bike path and we're outside working in the yards, they're like, we can't wait for Trucking Tuesdays. We finally have something we can walk with the kids too, and so it's just been extremely positive, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback. So we're excited about it.
Any further questions for the board? There is a motion suggested.
I would move to approve the special event permits for Four Quarters Brewing and Kramer and Kin Brewing to participate in Trucking Tuesdays at Adams Farm Market from May 26th through August 25th, 2020.
I would second that. I would second that.
Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have done it. So
Great idea, Kim. Great idea.
Thank you. We're pretty excited.
We look
Appreciate it.
forward to it.
We
Look forward to
hope
it.
we hope you come and enjoy.
Absolutely.
And Eric and Rick will just be in touch on the actual start date, but we're hoping that, you know, we can get going without losing too many weeks.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good, Kim. We'll get things submitted to the state. We'll have the town clerk send it in this week.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Be well, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
So we're a little bit early. Is Sarah Mason going to join us or?
Sarah's not planning on it. Rick was going to talk about.
Sorry.
Rick was going to talk about that.
Yeah, I don't,
Okay.
yeah, I don't believe.
Oh, Tyler just joined from the HOA. If you want to take the next
I'm having trouble hearing you.
item. Tyler just joined from the HOA. So.
Is he on the line?
Yep. We can
Oh,
go
okay.
and
Okay.
to that item now, right?
Okay. Then we will go on to item number 6, the Oak Hill Estates request for consecutive water system designation. I presume that is Bruce on the line as well to hear the testimony?
Yep, I'm in the process of getting Tyler and Bruce.
Okay. Then we can do the swearing in of them and ask you to give a very brief overview of where we're at, what we're dealing with tonight.
Just getting them set up here. Bruce is watching twice here, so I'm going to
Eric,
Can you hear us?
guess my camera open.
All right. I'm gonna have to mute one of your two here and we'll echo whenever you talk.
Can you hear me?
Yep, let's see. Can you try again, Bruce?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, that's better. I muted one of your two logins there.
Okay, I don't know why my camera's not working tonight.
You may need to go in the bottom left-hand corner, and it says there's a video camera, and you might need to go back.
Yeah, but I'm using my phone.
Oh, okay. So you can see Tyler's here.
I'm sorry, go ahead, I'm fine.
Okay. They're all set there.
So welcome to the appeal hearing on the Oak Hill Estates request for a consecutive water system designation. And we'll have presentations by Tyler Dawson on behalf of Oak Hill Estates, and then a presentation by Bruce Hoare on the basis of his denial of the request. So Eric, perhaps you could just give us a very brief overview of where we're at the moment, and then we can swear in both Tyler and Bruce.
Sure, Terry. So the select board is going to act as the water commission tonight to hear an appeal by Oak Hill Estates Homeowners Association to a staff decision to deny a consecutive water system exemption request. We'll treat this appeal as a quasi-judicial hearing. We'll have each party present evidence on the matter. Included in your agenda this evening is information from Mr. Dawson from the HOA and from Bruce regarding this matter that they'll address this evening. At the conclusion of the submission of evidence, the board can decide how it would like to proceed in taking up this issue, either an open session, a deliberative session, or to continue this at a future time.
Thanks. So I don't see Tyler Dawson on the screen.
Oh, he's below Ted. You might have a different view. He is
I don't see that one. Okay.
You see him? Okay.
Tyler, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
So I'm going to swear you in first of all. It's very simple. do you swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I do.
Thank you. So you have given us quite a packet of information, and I'm hoping that you can just coalesce that into the basic things as to what's happened and what you'd like to have happen.
Okay, sure. I can do that. Based on the trust that everyone had a chance to read all of my, or most of my submittal, yes, I'll just distill it. The state of Vermont created this Act 156 that's called the exemption of consecutive water systems. And it was specifically designed to help small systems like ours. It was done with a concern over water quality issues from the state's standpoint. It covers systems serving less than 500 persons, which ours is far below that because we only have 20 single-family homes. The Act allows systems like ours to partner with their wholesale water supplier, which in this case would be the town. And it requires the association or a water system to reach an agreement with the wholesale supplier to do the water testing and the consumer confidence reporting. This is something the town already does, water testing, so it's in addition to that. In other words, tagging on to that. The guidelines do not ask the town to assume any responsibility for the physical infrastructure or the equipment of our system. And the application specifically points to that. We're asking to craft an agreement that's very similar to the one the town already has with another consecutive water system, which is the Gulf Links system. And the Gulf Links agreement is called a consecutive water system agreement, and it requires Gulf Links to maintain all of its infrastructure and equipment, including its pump house. It says that the town would be responsible just for the water quality testing and reporting the results to the state. That's the same language that the Act is designed around. We're not asking for anything more than that. We just want to be allowed to use the Act that the state created to aid systems like ours. The state's goal was to make sure that water quality testing and reporting is done as best as it can. The language in the exemption application specifically states that the consecutive water system is responsible for maintenance of the system unless otherwise agreed to. The language also says the wholesale system is only responsible for the water testing and reporting. And these are functions the town already does for the rest of its water system. And I understand that the CWD does that for the town at no cost to the town. So we would be adding to that reporting process by adding our system to that. We as homeowners still pay to the town for our water use. We have meters and each homeowner pays for all the water that it uses. It's billed by the town. And I imagine that water fee covers water system expenses. So we're not in any way, as far as I understand all the details, wouldn't be adding any expense to the town. As a matter of fact, since we provide all of our own infrastructure, in theory, we have less expense for water supply on the town's side. So we're just asking to use the Act that the state created. And I know that Bruce had several concerns about the taking over of our system. And if we follow the rules of the Act and the application, and we follow a similar structure to the Gulf Links agreement, I don't see where we would be doing anything different than something the town is already doing for another water system. So that's my summary.
Good, thank you. So Bruce?
Yep.
need to swear you in as well. So I'll give you the oath. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So Bruce, go ahead and give us your reasons for denial of the designation.
I'm sorry, that was pretty like an echo or something, but you.
Yeah, sure, echo here.
You just want me to tell you what?
Why you denied the appeal?
Okay, first of all, Tyler's right in what the document says that the state created. However, from the state itself, I've gotten assurances that if we sign this document, we end up being responsible for that system. They'll look through they'll basically make their permit null and void and look through that for us to be responsible for every aspect of that water system, including the maintenance of the lines and the pump station. The one that keeps getting brought up here is the Gulf Links. Gulf Links is not a consecutive water system, nor has it ever been one. It was built and had a pump house put in it that was put in mostly for fire suppression. There is an agreement that's called consecutive water system, but it's by title only. It shouldn't have, in my opinion, shouldn't have been even titled that. The only thing that they're responsible for is that pump house over there and the lines that go to that pump house. They're not a permitted water system. Once again, and never have been. There should have been an agreement in place, as I said in my memo a long time ago. There wasn't. So this other document was created. It's not a state document, nor does it hold any water with the state of Vermont. So we're responsible for over there anyway. So that's the biggest thing. The system up on Oak Hill is not built to town standards. If we were going to take it over, it should be like any other private system we take over and have to be brought up to our standards before we would ever even consider that.
So there was some emails that were back and forth between Mr. Dawson and I think you were involved in that, the DEC, that said that essentially that they would not, the town would not be required to take over the system.
We're not required to sign this document at all. The DEC has said if we do sign this document, the Oak Hill water system will become null and void, their permit, and it would just fall underneath our permit, our water permit at this point, and we would be responsible for every aspect of it. At this point, Oak Hill does get the benefit of the CWD yearly consumer report, so they don't have to do that. My understanding is the water testing that's done by CWD could apply to the Oak Hill system. I don't know that it has been, but that's my understanding. As far as not being any additional cost, certainly CWD builds into their cost to us the expense of doing the testing that we have an agreement with them to be doing.
So, board members, do you have any questions for either Mr. Dawson or for Bruce?
I had a question for Bruce. I'm sorry, Jeff. Were you going to go? All right. Bruce, I'm confused I was looking over the environmental conservation application and certification form, and it does look like it says the wholesale water system supplying water to the consecutive water system is responsible for and must comply with, and then it goes through sampling. But right above that in 2A, it says the wholesale water system certifies, that'd be us, certifying that the owner of the consecutive water system, be the homeowners association, is responsible for the repair and maintenance of the consecutive system unless otherwise agreed to by the wholesale system. So as I'm reading that, it seems to say that unless the town by written agreement takes on that responsibility, that it's not our responsibility.
I agree with what you're saying, what it says, Ted, but it's throwing me off because I'm seeing Edward Kenny. But Ted, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but I got this from the A&R itself that they're saying that if we sign this form, as far as they're concerned, we will be responsible. I understand what you're saying about what the form says, but that's coming straight from the state. There's no reason, and what I didn't point out is that there is already an original agreement with the Oak Hill Estates water system that they will be responsible for that system and can't even request us to take it over or be responsible for it. That was an agreement when the whole thing was put together. This is no different than an HOA that's responsible for private roads or any other kind of infrastructure. It's their infrastructure, and if they want us to consider taking it over, which once again is what the state's telling me, if we sign this, we'll be responsible for it, then we're taking over a system that doesn't meet our standards.
Yeah, I hear you, but let me ask another question, and I'm sorry, this is, if we're talking over each other, I don't mean to be rude. In the packet that you submitted, there's an email from Tim Raymond at the state to Mr. Dawson and to pretty much the main people in the town, September 13, 2019. And Mr. Raymond says, should the wholesaler, the town of Williston Water Department, be willing to execute the consecutive water systems agreement, I would encourage, parentheses, but not require, see item 2A of the agreement. That's what I was just referencing. I would encourage, but not require, see item 2A of the agreement, the Oak Hill Estates water system to develop a formal agreement concerning the ongoing operation and maintenance of the booster pump station owned and operated by Oak Hill Estates. So isn't he saying that we do have that the form is saying that we wouldn't be responsible anyway, but if we want to do a belt and suspenders, we could insist on an agreement where they would do the pump station, and I should think with all the other infrastructure. I mean,
the consecutive form doesn't take into account the pump station. It only takes into account the water lines and the stuff in the ground. It wasn't even ever set up for extenuous items like water pump stations.
Let me know when I can comment.
Sure. Ted, are you through with questions, or?
Yeah, for now.
Tyler, go ahead.
First, the comment about the Gulf Links agreement, whether or not the town doesn't think it's a consecutive agreement, the state does. That's where I got the information. The state provided this consecutive water system agreement from Gulf Links to me, telling me that they view Gulf Links as a consecutive water system in the town, and there is no permit for Gulf Links itself. So whether or not the town understands that, the state is looking at it that way. And in reference to pump stations, it doesn't really matter what the wording of the application is. It's the repair and maintenance of the system, and the system includes a pump station, just like the Gulf Links includes a pump station. So we're not asking the town to do anything about taking care of our system, and we've been taking care of the system for 23 years. We're just asking to be able to do what the state created to save us the water testing expense. And in the state's eye, it makes it more reliable and safe. That's their goal. So I understand that this town doesn't want to look like it's taking on something that it doesn't want to take on. And I think that the Gulf Links agreement is really clear about all those things that are delineated. Yes, technically our permit goes away, but the permit is really about the water testing. Essentially, they want to make sure someone's testing the water, and that's definitely covered. And then with the agreement that we would have, that's very similar to Gulf Links, the town should be very assured that we're not asking them to fix anything or pay for anything or maintain anything. And yes.
Well, actually, I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. And actually, just as a point of order, if I can just get all my questions done, and then I'll be quiet, because video and
yeah.
So, Bruce, I wanted to ask another couple of questions. If we were not responsible for their system because the permit, the form from the state says that we're not, and in addition, we sign an agreement saying that they're responsible, not us. If that was true and enforceable, what would the town's financial exposure or responsibilities be?
That's a good question, Ted, but I'm just telling you what the state has told me, that if we sign this, we end up being responsible. They're the ones that developed the form. As far as I'm concerned, it's a kind of another way of the state to just push off work that they're responsible for, just like the stormwater permit stuff. We already have an agreement with this water system. It was put in place when the system was built and constructed. There's no what is the reason for us to change that at this point? There is no valid reason. Once again, like I said, the water quality testing that's being done by CWD, my understanding is that that's good for that system up there. And as far as the consumer report, which they'll be responsible for, they get included in that as part of our consumer report that comes from the Champlain Water District.
So can I go ahead? If all that's true, though, I mean, if it sounds like if we're not responsible for the infrastructure, then Champlain Water District is already doing everything that we'd be responsible for.
Well, we're responsible for it. They do it for us as for our water permit. We have a permit also. They just, as being the wholesaler to us and the nine other towns that they service, that's part of the contract with them, that they'll do the water quality testing instead of all different 9 towns running out and doing their own.
So what else would we have to do if we entered this consecutive water system agreement?
I'm afraid we're going to end up being responsible for a system that's not built to our standards, since I've got that straight from the chief engineer at the Agency of Natural Resources, Tim Raymond. That's what's right in my email. And I couldn't make it any clearer than asking point blank, would we be responsible for this? And his answer was yes. Well, actually, his email starts no. The opinion hasn't changed, that we would end up being responsible for that system in the eyes of the state. You're a lawyer. I mean, we can fight about that form if we sign it when the time comes, but why get into that kind of hassle if we're already getting something from them at this point that's saying we'll be responsible for it?
Well, if Mr. Raymond, if it turns out that he's using terms that are, we'd be responsible for the water system in a legal way. I don't know what the hell that means. If he's using terms that are not, I guess what I'm thinking is this: if he said that, but then in September he also said that we could enter an agreement to have them take care of the pump system. So it seems to me that I'm not exactly clear what Mr. Raymond means.
Well, he was talking about the pump house in general, once again, because that's not part of that agreement form. That form was never intended for, once again, pump stations. It was just intended for their in-ground stuff and the water quality testing, that kind of stuff. They never envisioned anybody taking over a pump station, so that's why he put in that email that we could have a separate agreement for the pump station.
Okay, but it seems, I guess what I'm just asking is this, is if I'm reading the form correctly, and I'm not saying I am, but it's a hypothetical. If I am reading the form correctly, and if we can in fact enter agreements with a homeowners association to make them responsible for the infrastructure, is it true that the town actually has no additional cost, and the responsibilities the town does have are being done by Champlain Water District as part of our deal with them anyway.
If what we're being told by Tim Raymond is wrong, then you're correct, Ted. But I just been doing this long enough to know that these kind of things, right now, they have a permit to operate. It's clear it's state's issue to deal with that permit to operate and everything that goes along with that. I just don't see what benefit the rest of the water users get by taking this system, which is what I'm being told we're going to end up doing.
Okay.
Other questions? Jeff?
First, I'll start with, well, I'm not sure who exactly these goes. I think Tyler. You had mentioned in your part of the talk that Williston is the wholesale supplier. So I just want to verify that that's true. It's not Champlain Water District. It is Williston is a wholesale supplier.
Oh, you want me to answer? Yes. If you, yes, the way it works, as I understand it, CWD sells water to Williston, and we technically buy our water from Williston. And on the state's form, it says that Williston is the wholesaler to us.
Okay, thank you. The reason I ask is because I was reading in the information where it talked about your pump station is close to Champlain's Water District's tank.
Yes.
And so I didn't know if your system is off the distribution piping that's considered Champlain Water Districts, or if it's off the piping that's considered Williston, and if that made a difference. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think maybe Bruce knows the technical, but the basically it's teed, as I understand it. There's a line that feeds the tank, and our line to our pump house is teed off that, and it's probably less than 100 feet from there to the pump house. So
Jeff, I'm sorry, Tyler. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's okay.
Jeff, all the water that comes into town goes in the tanks. So all those lines, except for the ones that feed the tanks, are CWDs. All the other lines in town are ours. We're not really a wholesaler to anybody, but on that form you're talking about, that's what it's saying. They're not getting a wholesale. We're not a wholesaler. CWD is the wholesaler to us, and that water just passes through to Oak Hill, just like it does everywhere else in town. The whole system's served by the 3 tanks. The tanks are owned by the Champlain Water District, but it's our water that goes in those tanks.
Okay, thank you. The next question has to do with the concept of, Tyler, you mentioned that you are billed based on water meters.
Yes.
What rate are you billed at? Are you billed at the same rate, for instance, I'm billed at because I'm a resident, I'm on the Williston water system? Or are you billed at a different rate that recognizes you're buying water from Williston on some sort of a wholesale basis?
I think that also Bruce knows the answer, but as far as I understand, we're billed at the same rate as all other houses in town. We're billed as individual homeowners with individual meters. So every home has a water bill along with the stormwater fee. But I think our rate is the same as everyone else, but maybe I've never been told it was different.
They pay the retail rate just like everybody else in the town of Williston pays.
Okay. And my last question is, I heard, if what I heard is correct, it sounds like Oak Hill Estates is double testing, like a better term, their water. It's being covered by Champlain Water District, but in addition, the homeowners association is also required to do testing, which comes at a cost to the homeowners association. Is that correct?
Yes, we as a separately permitted water system have to meet those water testing requirements from the state. And that was one of the reasons for Act 156, was to eliminate that if you want to call it double cost, but that was the reason behind the act. So as I understand it, if we were to be added into that loop, and I think there's a letter that Bruce actually had mentioned this earlier in a letter, but to the state, but the testing, as I understand, is done based on total users or total population, and there's a formula that they use. So they may not necessarily even need to come to our end of the line to take a sample. It's included it would be included in the gross sampling. Now, that is something that I guess would have to be specifically addressed, but that's the way I understand it would work. And there was in the packet I sent, the very last part was an email from Ellen, who was the assistant at the state level, she talks somewhat about that in there, where we may not even have to change the sampling plan. And like I said, we've been doing it for 23 years and we always have good results. And the state has records of that too. One other thing I want to mention is that maybe Tim's use of the word responsible is a little confusing, because yes, if we did this, the town would be responsible for the water testing. But once again, we would have the backup agreement to take away any concern about the responsibility for the equipment. And I think Bruce sent a letter previously, and he mentioned that we already have an agreement from way back where we're responsible for the equipment and the maintenance and repair. So it would kind of be like a double agreement.
Okay. And then I believe this has been stated, but I want to make sure I understand. Tyler, your understanding of the exemption that you would be gaining by becoming a consecutive system to the Williston system is with testing and sampling and testing only, and not any of the infrastructure. And by any of the infrastructure, I just want to be clear, not the pump stations, not the whatever they call the pipe that brings the water from the pump station. I work in sewage, so we call that a force main, but yeah, that's not appropriate here. That piping, the distribution piping, the valves, the hydrants, your understanding is that is not part of the exemption.
Right. The only part is the sampling, and then the consumer confidence report, which is a yearly report that we do get now from CWD, but we have to distribute. So it would be distributed by CWD itself, is what I understand.
Good, thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the board?
Terry, would it be all right if I asked a question?
Of course.
This is a question for Bruce. I wanted to clarify something because you and I had a conversation about the Gulf Links system earlier. As I understood what you had told me, and you can verify this, the system, once it was constructed by the developer, was a town system. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. They've never had a permit. It's always been our system.
All right. So the only thing that changed was at some point later, a special booster pump was needed. Is that accurate?
It was needed at the very beginning, Rick, but there was never, I don't know why there was never an agreement about it. I wasn't here, obviously, in the 80s or 90s when it was built. I haven't found anything. But no, the booster site, it was built in two phases over there. When they built the top, the higher phase, they needed to put the booster pump station in to build those homes for fire suppression.
Okay, so in spite of the fact that it talks about a consecutive water system, it's really a town water system that added a booster pump station, and we entered into a separate agreement for the maintenance of that, and that was put on the neighborhood. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'm wondering, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say once again that I understand the genesis of that agreement, but the state doesn't. The people that I talk to in the state don't look at it that way. They still think it's a system that's consecutive to the town, and the only thing in it that the town agrees to is water quality testing and reporting. All the other things in the agreement are on the water system itself, the Gulf Links.
That just kind of feeds into what I'm saying about their other form. If we sign it, they're going to say we're responsible for it when they don't agree with the other system. They're calling the other one a consecutive system, which it never was. So once again, I would say that's more reason for us not to change the standings as they are today.
Have you had any problem with the state in regard to Gulf Links? Have there ever been issues?
It's not our system. Why would we have any problem? It's not our system to have problems with. Just because they sent you that agreement that's between us and the homeowners over there, Tyler, doesn't mean that they agree with it or it's theirs. It's not their agreement. It's the town of Williston agreement. It has nothing to do with the state of Vermont.
No, I understand. And that's specifically the way that this act is designed and that the form is designed. It's always the agreement between in this case, the town is the water supplier, but whoever the water supplier is and the user, that's always the agreement. This act specifically says that the state doesn't require you to enter into that agreement or to develop that language, but it recommends it. And it's good for both sides.
Jeff, your question?
My question is this, I'm hearing Tyler say that the Act 156 is very clear that if the town agrees for this consecutive system to happen and signs an agreement to do that, the exemption is only about sampling and distributing the annual report. Bruce is saying, I don't know. The folks at the state seem to be saying, if we sign the agreement, we very well might be liable for the maintenance and upgrading of the water system. My question is who do we go to get a clear answer to what will the exemption consist of? What can we make the exemption as clear as possible, and what will it consist of?
And I think we're down to that point once we close the hearing. We could not necessarily go into deliberative session or open session, but have a general discussion. It appears to me that we need an independent third party, which would be our town attorney, to contact DEC to get a clear understanding, legal understanding of the process and what needs to be done. And if we can come to an agreement that it only requires an agreement, that the town attorney would then draft that for us and come back at a later date to figure this out after we get the more information that we need.
I think that's a really good idea. I don't feel comfortable with the amount of information that we have tonight to make the decision. I think if we could get legal counsel's input, and for that matter, if we had subpoena power, I would subpoena Mr. Raymond under penalty of arrest if he didn't show up. But it turns out we don't have that power. So, but I would like legal counsel to weigh in on it and maybe clarify with Mr. Raymond.
I would add, though, that the reason I had the information from Ellen was that Tim at some point decided that he was too busy to deal with this. So he switched me over to Ellen, who is his assistant. So whoever you go to.
I would think that we would need to go to somebody different than either one of those and go to a division director or even the commissioner or their attorney to talk to our attorney and make that determination.
I agree. That was going to be my point. Was I don't want to put limits on who our attorney can talk to. I would rather he figures out who does he need to talk to get us the right answer. And it may be the engineers, it may be others. The attorney at DEC sounds like a very good idea.
Yeah, I would agree with that also.
So I think it's time to close the hearing. Is there a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Close the second.
That's a discussion on the motion. If not, all those in favor of the motion to close the hearing, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So I think we have given staff direction as to how to proceed here. And we'll continue the discussion once we get more information and hopefully have a way forward on this.
Okay.
So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
So let's move on to the dog license late fee waiver. We have a letter from Sarah Mason regarding that, and also an email later today suggesting that we not just eliminate the fee, the late fee, after July 1st, but for the whole year. So who's Sarah going to be on this or not?
Rick's going to talk about it.
Rick is going to do it. Rick?
Well, actually, I'm not familiar with this most recent email. So when was this sent?
Well, later this afternoon, I believe. I read it about 4 o'clock.
Let's see if I can find it.
She's saying a lot of towns are just eliminating the fee entirely for the fiscal year.
Yeah, I don't see that. I must not have been. Well, anyway, the point is that we're in a extraordinary situation, and people are having trouble complying with the requirement. And so, because if they don't have their dog, well, anyway, I think the short of it is people are having trouble complying at this point. And so we felt that waiving the fee made sense.
Questions or comments from the board? And my concern is just getting dogs licensed so that we know that they're vaccinated for rabies, and however that happens, whatever the best way to happen, have that happen is fine.
That is a concern that we have because the number of dogs that are licensed, as you saw from one of her earlier communications, is down. And I suspect the number of dogs in the community is not down.
Right.
So I think we're going to need to do a little bit of outreach and communication with the community to make sure that they do in fact get their dogs licensed and they won't be charged any late fee, assuming the board agrees with this.
Other questions or comments?
So are we thinking that we're going to waive the late fee through July 1, or are we going to waive it for the whole year? And before I lose the microphone, I think I'd prefer to do it through July 1, and we can revisit the issue later on.
True. That may make sense to do it in stages.
That seems reasonable to me.
So there is a motion suggested.
I would move to waive the late fee of $4 for dog registration until July 1, 2020.
Second. And we have a second. Discussion on the motion. If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we've done that. We're on to the manager's report. Rick?
I have to unmute myself here. So just a couple things I wanted to touch on in addition to my written report. The first is I've been providing weekly reports to the board on the staff's response to the virus situation. And so I wanted to see if the board had any questions on these reports. As of today, we still don't have any employees who have become infected by this virus. And I think that's largely due to the efforts of every single department head and the actions we've taken to protect our employees, and we will continue to do so. The goal is to allow our staff to continue to provide all essential services, and by keeping our employees healthy, that's one sure way we can do that. Are there any questions on that report that I've been providing?
I appreciate it very much.
So do I.
Okay, we'll continue to do that. The report may get shorter because if I don't have anything new to add to it, it may be a lot shorter than the first one or two. All right, moving on then to some good news. Muddy Brook Culvert project. We're working closely with the city of South Burlington, and we were successful in getting a grant to help pay for a portion of that. It's $300,000, and I know that both Bruce and his cohort in South Burlington are working on additional grants. And so we're hoping that we can bring that price to both communities down even further beyond that. But that's a good start. My recollection is that's overall a $1.8 million project. And Bruce can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, 1.8 to 1.9, somewhere in there, yeah.
Okay, and so Wilson's share would be about half that. And so the $300,000 would be, we'd get half of that value against our share. So that's good news. On another related topic, and which is one of the reasons why I wanted Bruce to kind of hang on here, is moving forward, cash flow is going to be a huge issue for the community, and not just cash flow, but a shortfall in revenue, both this fiscal year, but more importantly, next fiscal year. We have, at this point, no clear idea as to how that will manifest itself. There are just too many variables, too many unknowns. We do know that the federal government has provided some support. We don't know exactly what form that's going to have for us, but it's certainly prudent, I believe, to assume that we will have less revenue moving forward. So that means we then have to look at expenses, because that we have a little bit more control over. And one of the big expenses we have, which would be out of next year's fiscal budget, is the money that we pay for paving. That's one of the largest single line items that we have in our budget. And it's, I think, a little over $400,000. There are costs associated with delaying any paving, possible cost increases down the line, further erosion of the roads, which can create safety hazards. Bruce can address those. But because of the size of the expense, it gives us a little more flexibility if we do delay that moving forward. But I wanted to get the board's input on that, because as I said, it does have a negative impact as well. Bruce, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, I guess it's not going to be any better news, but it's actually $480,000 is what's in the budget for paving. The bids we just put out and got back were in the 410 range or something like that, Rick. But that number is always lower when I get it back, because I never know what the paving cost per ton is going to be. So we always add to that. So that line item is $480,000, which I really don't know how we can not do it. It's going to, paving of roads and that infrastructure, we're already behind on. I know that, the town's been real generous, gave us a 200,000 bump when I got here to get us up into the $400,000 range for paving. But in reality is we should probably be doing $750,000 worth of paving every year just to stay afloat. We're getting better roads. Our PCI numbers are coming up, although kind of staying steady now. To delay that and not do it is just going to put us so far behind and cause some dangerous roads. So that's my 2 cents for not touching that money.
I think one other factor I wanted to mention, which is actually supportive of what Bruce is saying, is that the expense does add somewhat to the local economy, although I would think that given the fact that oil is a major ingredient to the asphalt, that money does not stay local. So maybe the impact is a little bit less than might normally be expected for expense that much size.
So we have a relatively large fund balance, and can we use some of that without voter approval?
Well, as a practical matter, if we have less revenue, then that will come out of the fund balance. So it's not a matter of getting voter approval. It's just a matter of that's what's going to happen. Just as on the other flip side of it, when we get more revenue out of our sources, like primarily the local option tax, that doesn't require voter approval either. It's just a fact of what happens with the revenue source. So I think the answer to your question, Terry, is no. It's just a matter of how much we get, and then if we get less, then it'll if there's a shortfall, it'll come out of fund balance.
Other comments?
Well, can I ask, with the price? I mean, the price of oil is tanking right now, so that might make sense to take advantage of that and go ahead with the work if it's going to be less expensive for the raw material that we need.
We've got $68 a ton this year, which is like $1 more than last year, which is really good. And to be under, when I put the bids together, I always use about $75 a ton because I never know what it's going to be. So yeah, we're not going to see numbers like $68. Again, I wouldn't think, especially after what the world's going through right now, only coming to the other end of it.
Bruce, I had a question just to clarify something you said a moment ago. You said that the budget was $480,000 and this cost of this contract is $410,000. So does that mean then if all this work is done, we'll have $70,000 still left in the budget next fiscal year?
No, it means that I was going to add roads that are on the list either for next year and get them done. It's the same thing I do every year, Rick. I put it out, we get a number back, and then we add roads to it rather than, put out a bunch of roads and not, and go over the other way. So, certainly there could be less than $480,000, but there's already a couple roads I was really kind of glad to see at $400,000. We got a little bit of work in Lamplight that's got to be done. We've got some other roads that if we don't do something to, we're going to be in real trouble with. So theoretically, there'll be a little money left, but not a lot.
Bruce, I got a question. We're hearing that some contractors are suspending operations. Some of them are doing it, on a short-term basis and then seeing what happens. Others seem to be more, what would be the word, believing that this is going to be more of a long-term situation. What are your thoughts? Will there be people out there who can actually do the paving?
Your guess is as good as mine, Jeff. But considering our paving they can't even start our paving until after July 1st, which is every year that way. We're usually getting paved. And last year we got it done early, but we're usually in September, October before we're even seeing the pavers. So I got to believe that hopefully we'll be back up to doing some kind of work by that point. How the paving plants, and our low bid is from Pike, one of the producers this year. if they have big state contracts or whatever, will they push, you wouldn't think $500,000 is a small number, but will they push smaller numbers out? Very well may.
Okay.
They have till July 1 of 2021 to fulfill the contract. And they can't change the price, obviously, unless there's a 5% cost in the oil difference.
Other comments? I don't hear any great reason to not do the paving.
Agreed.
So moving on.
And unmute myself again. All right, well, thank you for that input. I think the last thing is a financial report. I had sent you this report by email today and posted it as well. We have, I believe, in the audience, our finance director, and if she is there, she's prepared to give the board a report. This is the finance report through the end of February, I believe.
Yep. I see Shirley here.
And she's ready to be promoted, I think.
Okay, I'll promote her. With a click. Just be a moment, I think.
Sure.
Hey, Eric, can you hear me?
Yep.
Even though you can't see me?
There you are.
There you be.
All right.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So a lot of the reasons for the changes haven't changed from when we did the February report. So I'm just going to highlight a few things. Rick touched on a couple things. The first being the sales, rooms, and meals tax. I would say I'm expecting that for the next two payments to be less than the prior years based on what's happening right now, and possibly less than budget. We were about 69,000 ahead of last year's actuals, but I think we're going to see that disappear with the next couple of quarterly payments. I don't have much good news here, but so the other program that I am expecting that we will not make budget is our rec programs, as they've all been canceled until further notice. Hopefully the summer programs will run because they do provide a lot of revenue. And maybe the good news to offset that is I did chat with Rick today and emailed Jean Jensen at the school district requesting a discount to the fee, the building use fee and the playground use fee that we pay to the district. Since we have at least 3 months, we won't be able to use those. So hopefully they'll come back and be willing to negotiate a little bit to reduce our fee. Let's see. Good news in the water sewer just continues on from last month. The hook-on fees are much greater than budget, as noted, mostly due to the Vermont Hotel Group and the sewer, the allocation fee, the 05 allocation fee, budget of $34,000. We are. Oh, I didn't even write the difference to budget, but hold on just a sec. Allocation fees were like $311,000. We've got, the hotel, Vermont Hotel Group at $102,000, Allen Brook at $115,000, and Creed's Edge at $18,000, and a bunch of other small things. So even though they're not part of the fund balance, those funds will be doing well. I don't have anything else I was going to review because most of it is a repeat of what I talked about last month. We didn't have that many changes. It's just what can we anticipate? And as Rick mentioned, I will start working on a cash flow, but I'll be working with each department heads and making our best assumptions, and we'll just keep updating it as we go along and know more information, because the real concern is it's not about revenue, it's about cash, as we talked about last time. And, you know, will we have enough cash to go through the summer? What's going to happen with the property tax billing now that the tax return extension has been the 15th, usually the 15th of July. We're sending out tax bills. We may not even have all the credits, so we may not be able to send out the tax bills, which might affect that August 15th payment date. So, you know, and cash flow over the summer is low. So that's the issue that we'll be spending a lot of time looking at. And that's all I have, unless you have questions.
Question for you. During the budget session, we didn't do the water, sewer, and stormwater budgets. When would we be looking at those?
Hopefully the end of the month is what we have planned. They've all, Lisa, I know, is working on the water and sewer, and I have a couple numbers to put together for the stormwater. Bruce and Christine and I have gone through it. I just have to do a number for them and get it back to them, and that one may be all set. And then I'll just have to check with Lisa. Have you heard anything from her, Bruce? She's asking a question.
I talked to Lisa today. I went through the water budget today, made some changes, and told her the only thing I've got to look through the sewer one quick yet, but the only thing we're waiting for then is the decision on what we're going to do with capital.
Capital, yep, and I need to get those out to you this week.
Then we'll be all set. We should be able to be good for the end of the month, Terry.
Good. Any further questions? It's not. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Terry, that's all I had for this evening under manager's report.
Thank you, Rick. Are there any catering permits needed, or?
There are none.
There are none. So other business, is there any other business we need to talk about tonight? Hearing nobody, we'll be adjourned.
Nice, Ted.
Thank you.